and welcome back to Unfiltered. We have a new episode for you guys, and we have a new guest, our first guest of our podcast. You can introduce yourself. I don't want to butcher your name because it's a bit of a hard one to say.
Okay, my name is Harut.
Wow. But we all call you.
We all call you all call me Harut. I call me.
I mean the same, yeah. Exactly.
Yes,
nice.
and what else? I am from Armenia.
Wow.
I lived many years in Argentina. That's why I'm kind of like Armenian, Argentinian, but I'm Armenian.
Yeah.
Blood, Armenian blood.
But you're married to...
I'm married to Argentinian.
Yeah, who happens to be my sister.
Whoa.
So you have to behave.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
Nice. And today, for our topic, we're talking about worship. Woo. Because, spoiler alert for future questions, all three of us are on the worship team, actually, on bass, which is a real privilege and also comes with some difficulties sometimes, some learning curves. So we kind of wanted to have an open conversation about worship and what that means, what that looks like. I think it's a big topic, but hopefully we can cover some important points today. To start us off, I have a question.
Okay.
What does worship look like for you personally? Because I think if I can get the ball rolling. I don't know, I think before I came to YWAM, or before I was really involved in church so much, like I didn't really go to church that much growing up. And so when I came to YWAM, that was kind of my first experience with like more free worship, you know, or like honestly just kind of worship that wasn't on a Sunday, you know, which was like 2 songs. And so for me, like I learnt on DTS, or I learnt here, like about how worship isn't just music.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of my question. Like, what does worship look like for you? Or I don't know, how is that experience?
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, worship, as you said, I think it's not just songs. I love the part that is songs, and we worship all, or personally, or like all together corporately.
Yeah.
But worship is, for me, it's like having my my affection to God in every moment.
Yeah.
Also the thing that I bow to. It can be anything that if I bow to, like if I worship to something that is even not God, is that it's worship, you know.
Right.
That's why I think it's always my way of worship is like always trying to have my affection to God and have this surrender and worshiping Him in every moment of the day. Doesn't need to be like in specific moment.
Yeah.
But I think that it's something.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, it's one of those things that obviously we do it and you have to do it. And I think you grow up with it, but the more that I've like especially been leading worship, I always ask myself like, is this like genuine worship, you know? And as I'm doing this, is it like actually pleasing to God, but also like, is it actually like am I faking it, you know? Like what am I doing? So I think many times, especially like when you grow up in church, or when you grow up like in service style worship, generally like each song is picked out to like depict something from the preaching or something that we're going to talk about, or the offering
Kind of program.
Exactly. Yeah. There's always like an agenda with it, you know? So like each song is supposed to like connect with that. And so even like as you're doing something, like it also has that sort of similar vibe, if you like. So something that like I've been kind of meditating a bit more lately is like, okay, is this genuine worship, you know? Because I think also sometimes I'm like afraid to go out of the box, because it's not like, I guess like the norm, you know, like what people do. You know, like, I don't know if it happens to you, but like it's also like now like embedded in me that like as soon as the chorus hits, like I lift up my hands. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, because like that's like,
or the bridge.
yeah,
like
exactly.
bridge,
Yeah. Whenever it's like a bit
Or you
extra.
need to change the volume, you know, in the
Yeah,
songs and
exactly.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get the
Contrast
vibe,
between-
yeah,
Or whenever you do, like, for example, in the verse, like, you're like with the one hand here, you know,
Mm.
and then you're like, so I throw up my hands. Yeah. You're like both hands now. It's like, now I'm legitly like worshipping. You know?
Yeah,
Or when
yeah.
it says like everyone bows down, and I'm like, how I was supposed to bow down now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And keep singing. Like, do
Yeah,
I
yeah,
take the
yeah.
guitar and the microphone? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's honestly, I think that sometimes it's really difficult to be like genuine in that moment and
Yeah.
don't overthink it and like continue,
Mm.
especially as a worship leader,
Yeah.
because you have to like, you also have the responsibility of having to lead other people. So it's
Mm.
not like suddenly I can just be like, no, you know, like and have a moment. I think for me, the difficulty is also finding that balance, like I said, like as you're leading.
Yeah.
Is it so different when you're in corporate worship, but like you're not on the stage,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
You can hide it a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also, like, I don't know, I was thinking while you were talking about being genuine and being in worship. I don't know, for me in this last like season, to be honest, I've had a hard time being in worship. Like just really like I've had to choose to worship God, you know, which like is fine. There's seasons where it's easier and there's seasons where it's not, you know?
Yeah.
But I think something that you said, like, I don't know, what is maybe that line between like what is genuine and what's me pushing myself and me fighting to worship, or what's me like, this is fake. You know what I mean? Like, am I fighting to worship and am I choosing really like in my spirit, or am I like just saying the words because I'm there?
Because
you
they're
know?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And everybody else is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also like thinking about that. Like the moment that you are like, I need to push myself or not. Sometimes I need to push myself because like I think my flesh not always wants to worship God.
For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
It-
Most of
Not
them.
always. But it's
Being too
also my
honest.
choice, like to
Yeah.
say like my soul worship.
Yeah.
How do you say that in English?
Yeah.
My soul worship God.
Yeah.
You know, like tell him.
Yeah,
like,
you're
take
speaking to
my-
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my flesh and say like,
Yeah, that's really good.
I will worship God because He deserves it.
Mm.
And I think about the other point that you said, when it's like fake or not. I just start to see in my personal like times of worship. When I start to do in a corporate worship and I start to worship and I feel like I am like pushing or I'm like I need to like I am fighting if it's fake or real.
Yeah.
It's when I'm also in my life, when in my secret place with God. It's like I'm not having that intimacy with Him that
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
I think that is also like a key point when I have this intimacy like deep with God, then in a worship time it's naturally my worship.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I was even thinking like, obviously we're in a community, right? So when we have worship, our last episode we were talking about community.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about worship, in our context at least, we go through seasons where there's like lots of people in the house, and then there's
Yeah.
seasons where we have not that many people in the house. So when
Yeah.
we're doing worship, like sometimes I feel like I have to sing times 5
Mm.
because
Yeah.
like I'm singing in order to fill a room.
Yeah.
And like sometimes like that's necessary because you know what you were saying, like pushing yourself and
Yeah.
like telling yourself and your spirit and your soul like we're gonna worship, like going in that opposite spirit. But sometimes like it's also like difficult because, or maybe not necessarily like the right thing, because it's not about compensating, you know. And I think sometimes finding that balance of like, okay, well, how much is it like me encouraging other people, and how much is it like to worship, and how much is it also me just trying to fill a gap or fill the room with something just in order to, so it can sound prettier, you know. And I think also talking about like community and cultures and stuff, I think that's what's the beauty as well when like we worship in different languages or when we go to other places and we hear worship in a different way.
Yeah.
Like it just sometimes it like encourages us and says, wow, like makes me think we're so blessed. And sometimes it makes me be like, we're not doing enough. We need to do better, you know, like we're not giving our all in worship. I remember once I went to an outreach in Tanzania and we were in this tiny church that could be like, it could have been like a shed basically, like that small. And there was maybe like 6 people in the congregation maximum. But they had like 4 times of offering, and every time for the offering they would all dance and make their way to the front and like put their offerings, you know. And it was the same 4 people, 5 people that kept giving, you know. And like I always go back to that point because for them like worship was also a part of like also giving, you know. And it was like joining those two and being in the same spirit, you know. And like I think that alignment is sometimes something that I need to like always kind of bring back in everything that I'm doing. That it's not just now that I'm really singing a song, it's like yay, you know. But now that I'm sitting down and listening to the preaching, I'm also like yay, you know. I don't know.
Yeah. And speaking about like living in community and worshiping like together, I know you guys are both like have led worship. I've led worship like 1 or 2 times, and if I'm being honest, it's scary, guys. I don't know if you've ever like experienced that, but it's like it isn't always like an easy position to be in. I think I also like, especially more like in recent years, now that I've gotten more used to like big worship, or like I don't know, I think of like Bethel, or I think of Hillsong, or I think of whatever big church, and you look at the people on stage and they look so cool, you know. They're like rocking it, and like they look cool with their little beanies and like I don't know, they just look like they're so comfortable, you know. But at least in my experience, and I don't know, I can't speak for them, I'm sure like they also have their own things going on, but like I don't know, when I've led worship, it's quite intimidating. It is like also, like, I realize how much I'm really carrying. I'm not just, like, it's not just me on my own. It's me with all these other people and leading all these other people. Like, I don't know, what are some difficulties or blessings, like, that you guys have seen in leading corporate worship? Or, like, how do you handle it when you're trying to take the people, like, one way? And I don't know, like, for example, like, you're trying to, like, have a like more upbeat worship, or like you're trying to have it more praise like directed towards God, but everyone's like to worship you, you know. Like how do you get like how do you navigate that, you know? Like what does that look like?
There is, it's interesting, like leading for me, it's sometimes, I don't know if it's difficult. It can be difficult, but I don't know if it's difficult, but sorry, I repeated 5 times.
I don't know if it's difficult, but
it's difficult.
It's difficult.
But I think it's a lot of responsibility from my side. It's to say I need to lead the people. I don't need to do like this thing, you know, like trying to push it, but at the same time, like, it's not about how much I push. It's about like how much God does. It's not by sight, but it's by His Spirit. Like always this, even in the middle of the worship, I'm like, okay, I need to push, and then I'm like, but it's not about how much I push. And then I'm like, but we need to push maybe in this moment. Like it's so many things that I think it's a lot about like to ask also Holy Spirit how to guide in different situations. When you see like you want to like push it in this moment, and the people is like in this version of which is also like every people like worships God in different ways. And sometimes my eyes also like I see and I'm like, no, I need to push them to worship, but then I'm like, no, but actually maybe they are like standing, but they are having an amazing like time of worship, because it's not like just singing loud, you know? That's why it's like that is maybe the difficult and not difficult, but it's, I think it's a big blessing to also to be in that position. It's blessing, but at the same time it's like a lot of responsibility that you are carrying, and you
Yeah.
need to
100%.
like
yeah.
make sure that you are doing in the with the right heart and right spirit, you know.
Yeah. No. I've never really so I've been in worship since I was little. My grandpa has always led worship, and just I think it started with like, can you help me sing this Sunday? And once you say yes, that's it. It's the end.
No
Prepare
turning
yourself.
back.
No turning back. Literally. So I started by like just singing with my grandpa, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then later on, it was just like always singing kind of backup. And then it ended up being that we went through a season where there was a lot of people in worship. So I remember that like it would be ages, like literally ages, till I was back on the worship team,
Right.
like, you know, and asked to sing.
Yeah.
So it just kind of felt like a duty. Yeah. And it was just like, okay, well, like now I'm just on stage. And at the beginning, and I think everybody, like whoever says no, I think they're lying, because I think it's a temptation that it's like in our flesh, you know, that's it. Like we will all struggle with it. You will always like struggle when being in worship with the like, now I'm on stage, you know? And so like, you know, like there is something about it that is also like, wow. For some people, it's a bigger struggle than for others, and that there's no doubt in that. For me, it was a struggle for like a little bit, especially when I was younger. And then it was more like, I don't want to be there because of like hearing what would people would say, you know, and like, worship leaders, you know, it's all about the show or whatever, you know. So I didn't want to be associated with that. And then, like I said, like there was a time where like we barely ever had people on worship, like the same people for that many times, especially because I didn't bring anything to the table. I only sang. And there's generally many singers and few like actual instrument players. And then we went through a season where like literally it was like from day to night where there was nobody to like be in worship. And it was really difficult. And so I basically said, okay, I need to step up. And so I learned to play the guitar, and by learn to play the guitar, I mean the 5 holy chords of worship.
You just change the capo.
Literally, just change the capo to make those like songs from Matt Redman sound a little bit more women-like, you know. And that's it. But yeah, that's all you need, you know. And at first it was really rough because obviously I wasn't made for that. My sister's a great musician, and it's just really not my thing. But I really understood that it was like not just a season, but it was also like an aspect of like serving, you know? And that it was about like, this is what had to be done. And I know that like, it's something that I've cultivated and that I've also like sown for a long time when it comes to worship, because of having to be there for many years, and especially through that hard season where there wasn't anybody, where like a lot of that pressure and responsibility was on my back. But I know that it's not where I'm supposed to be, because I know that also what I'm supposed to be is serving. So many times it is frustrating. Sorry, that was a huge loop, but and sometimes it is so frustrating when you're like there, because also you know what you've done, you know how you got there. You know where you're going, how your week was, and so you find yourself in that point, and you're like, it's a blessing to worship, you know, and it's like, guys, we should worship, and like, you know, you're trying to pump up the crowd, you know, but you're looking at people, and they just don't do that. And so for a while, I remember that like I'd sing and I'd just close my eyes the entire time, just because it's just discouraging sometimes, you know, to like to see people like whatever. But it, exactly.
It's like, no.
Who's gonna worship you like that? But I really like, I don't know, it's been really humbling to like realize that like it's not that they need to do it for me. You know, it's really about them and God, and that I'm just like God's tool here, you know, being used by God. I don't know if that makes sense. So
I remember like it was not many years ago, but my worship times that I used to do in DTS, in the discipleship schools, and it was like very basically like me trying to see how much I can maybe lead them to worship, or how great I can do. Until like I heard one like teacher that came to teach in the base,
Yeah.
and he was speaking about something different, completely different, and he started to say like about like sometimes like worshippers we can like when we are leading basically put like a straw. This is a great example. Like put a straw into the people and try to like suck the energy or the acceptation. I would say like
approval, yeah.
approval from the people instead of like do the straw to God and the people, you know. And that was like so impactful because I was like, yeah, actually,
Yeah, that's really
I do
The
like ask the people sometimes like exhort them to start to worship, like lift your hands or do this and do that, but because I see with my eyes, and if I don't see how they are worshiping,
right.
if it should be right in this way, it's not right, you know.
Yeah.
And then I need to like do everything to see the result that I need, but it's actually like the straw to God, you know. But again, this is the balance. Like you need to like be sensitive to also the Holy Spirit because sometimes he asks for like call the people, you know, like to action. Yeah.
And I think it's important to like remember like what the purpose of that time of worship was as well. What is like, and also being sensitive to the Spirit, you know, like what is God leading us into in this moment? You know, it's good to have like a soaking moment. You know, it's good for people to like sit on the ground and weep. You know, but is that also like how it is every single time? You know, I think something that like it's so beautiful is not when we can like shapeshift, because it's not about being fake, but it's when we can like be responsive to the Spirit according to how he's calling, you know, like, and that we can be like plug in for however, you know, sometimes we need to do warfare, you know, as we're worshipping, and that's good, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's about doing warfare for myself, and that means also like weeping and becoming undone before God.
Yeah, it's not trying to put like God in a box, you know. Because it's if I say like the worship is in this way and we should like have these songs and doing this like this mood, it's kind of to say, okay, God just like thinks about this, you know, warfare. But no, he has emotions, and he has like so much urgency in different aspects in life that I cannot put him in a box. I need to like always be having this sensitive heart, like to see what is this moment. For, you know.
I think that's what's so interesting actually about corporate worship is that we're so many people, kind of similar to what you were saying, Julie, like how you come into leading worship and you're like, by this point you're like, let's go, you know, like I'm ready. I've been prepping this whole week. I'm like, you know, I'm ready to worship. I'm so excited. You know, I know what my week's been, and I know that I'm here and I'm ready to go. But maybe not everybody's like that, you know. Maybe someone else had a really hard week, or someone even like yesterday in worship, you said that you started with that, like, how has your week been, guys? Good. You know, has anyone had a bad week? You know, you asked that.
I did,
And I actually thought that was really cool, because I think that it's so, like, we're so quick to be like, yeah, like, I had a good week. And then you actually look back on your week and you're like, wait a minute. Did I? You know? And you're entering into worship, and how? You know? Like, how are you actually entering? Like, and I think that's a really good, like, I always, like, I really love being on worship team, because you can, like, almost prep yourself in a way. Like I like having more time to be like, okay, God, like I'm gonna worship you on Friday night at this time, and we have these songs, and I'm preparing myself also for that, you know. I think that's also a big part of being on worship, either leading or just being on the team, is like, okay, like let's prepare ourselves, you know. And I think sometimes, like, I don't know, I've been not frustrated, but I find it difficult when like people will just like come to worship and their like eyes are like, you know, they're like rubbing their eyes, like just woke up from a nap, you know, and you're like, I've been practicing for like 4 hours.
Exactly.
Not because it's like I'm better, or like, I don't know, now I have some like something over you because I've been practicing more, but more just like the preparation that comes with going into worship. I think there should be, like, I think there should be like preparing my heart to enter into this place, because it's holy ground, you know, where you're going,
and not just like spiritually and emotionally, but also physically. Like, like I don't I don't think that you have to come to worship with lipstick, like smelling fresh out the shower, like, you know, But at the same time, like you are bringing worship in every sense, you know. So you're coming before God, like like don't just look at your outward appearance, look inside, but both are important. And I think this is where I think sometimes although we have worship in our schedule, sometimes we're a bit like spoiled because we have worship where we live as well. So like you said, sometimes it's like, oh, I forgot we've got worship after dinner, you know, instead of having to go to church where you have to physically drag yourself to it, you know, and so you're mentally preparing yourself as you get there. Doesn't mean that you didn't have a bad week, but you've got that time that you're like practically like moving yourself from one place to the other.
Like
so you have
active physical thing that's like actually really spiritual,
and you have to reflect on and so I think sometimes this is where we need to actually like tweak like and turn up a notch and say I need to be better at like being like more prepared.
That's actually why, like, I think one of you touched on it, like how there's songs that are like, and I throw up my hands and I praise you again and again, you know, and like, of course you're like, should I raise my hands? Or like, I don't know, like I'm bowing down at your feet or whatever. But I think it is like, kind of like what you're saying, those like physical things that this song is singing about that aren't just words, you know, like I actually think it is really like, maybe like not you have to do it, but I think it is important if in case you're singing I throw up my hands and I praise you again and again, I'm gonna throw up my hands, you know, like I'm gonna do it because that's what I'm singing, and that's also like a physical way that I'm showing like that I worship you, kind of like what you're saying at the beginning, like that I'm choosing this, and that like I'm gonna not just sing it and like but I'm gonna like take those steps like you're saying to like physically do something that is actually very spiritual, you know?
100%.
Yeah. My final question to wrap us up here, ladies and gentlemen, is more of a fun one. I'm kind of excited for this one. It is, what are like, sorry, we're taking it way far away from the deep aspect. We just kind of closed that little chapter there. What are like some classic like worship fails that you have experienced, that you have been there for? Like I was thinking of how I feel like I always see memes about this, how people are like, you think that they're going into the chorus, but you're not actually going into the chorus, you know, they're like gonna do the verse again, but you didn't know, so you're like, I'm coming back. You know, you start like humming. Like, no, everyone else like looks at you, and you're like,
oh yeah, that's what I was supposed to do. Yeah. Play it cool.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys can think of any other ones that you have.
I think a usual one for me is always, there's a few, but it's always singing the wrong verse or like the wrong end of the verse. Especially with the ones that are like super wordy, you know, and you're like, you mix up.
Oh, a classic is a beautiful name. I feel like I never
what a
know.
Powerful name.
Is it powerful, wonderful?
Yeah.
What's the other one?
And like, I always know it. Like you're like, oh yeah, it's a beautiful, wonderful, powerful. Cause you end up with the bam, you know? But then eventually, like, I'm like, wonderful. Like in the moment you're like I just don't know, and you always sing the wrong one, and like and because you're leading, like you're going for it, but then you like open your eyes and you see that people are like,
because they're looking at the lyrics. All the lyrics say like beautiful, and you're like wonderful. You're like, I'm over here and I just need to continue. They can follow me.
Exactly. Yeah. And another one that's like really like just embarrassing, honestly. It's like when you forever thought that one word was a specific word, but it wasn't that word.
Yeah.
And you sing something.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like, okay, so for me it was what was the one you were just singing?
Beautiful name?
No, the one
coming
before.
Back to the heart of worship.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Lord, for the things I've made it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's how it says. The things I've made it, you know? I thought it said, I'm sorry, Lord, for the things I made when. It's all about you. Like it's not that, you know, it's not that different.
Okay,
but I was like, made when. And then one day I like was like, made when, what like what happened? Like when, where, you know? And then I realized and I looked, you know, so you're so confident, you know? And especially if you're up there, not everybody judges you, you know,
Yeah.
and so you just keep going. And sometimes people don't tell you. That's the worst, when people don't tell you.
Yeah.
And then you're singing the
just been
worst.
singing it. Yeah, I don't know if you guys heard about this. One of the girls at the bass, Nolani, shout out. I think we
Again?
did a shout out for her
Second
last-
time.
But she, have you heard about this? The
My
song,
Guardian.
yeah, the Guardian.
My
She
Guardian,
thought
yeah.
instead of my guardian, she thought my God, who is?
Yes,
My God,
it's
who
true.
is?
Yeah, my God, who is?
That's
she was
it.
so convinced.
So
was
She
like,
was
"My God,
sure.
who is-"
I'm
Yeah.
like, girl,
no,
that's the the
listen.
title of the song is Guardian, and it's not even like they only say it there. They
Yeah.
say
They
it
say
at
it in
another
every
point
part
of
of
the
the
song.
Yeah, it's
My
so
God,
funny.
who
Yeah.
is? Yeah, wow, that's powerful. My God, who is?
And also something that is very funny. It's when you practice.
Sorry,
the
Nolani, by the
songs-
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you practice the song by yourself, like when you
Oh.
sing the song, like
This is classic
quiet,
Harut.
quiet,
Oh, yeah.
like the key it's perfect.
It's
Like
so
the
true.
key, or
This is
even it's like-
classic Harut.
even if
Those who have been on worship team with Harut know this
Yeah.
is
even
classic.
it's like so high. You're like, okay,
But it's
this is
true.
this is a great key.
Yeah.
And when you start to sing, and it's like,
You are
yeah, or
worthy.
like high, or like so low, and and it
So
happened to me
bad,
like say,
yeah.
it's low.
And then it's like questionable of whether or not it's like a worship song or like it
Yeah.
was like
Opera,
You know?
Yeah.
yeah, like
And you
baby
just
turn them
finish like
down
what?
and
I
turn
start
the
to-
lights down low.
Yeah. And I start to like close the song like earlier, you know, because you're like,
Yeah, you
Eh,
gotta wrap it up.
or my key, it's like a good key for a man,
Yeah.
and then I just hear
Oh,
like
that's the worst. Oh my
all
gosh.
the women
Yeah.
like singing.
yeah, trying to reach
Yeah.
something,
Like,
fit
we
in
need to
But
somewhere.
that's-
end this
Yeah,
suffering.
that's
for
so
real.
sad because there's so many songs that are like great, you know,
Yeah.
but if you don't have a guy, you can't sing it,
Yeah.
and it's so sad.
It's the
Or if
same
a
with
guy
the
wrote
guys,
it,
yeah.
often it's like the
Yeah.
chorus is super low and then the verses are really high, or
Yeah.
vice versa. Like you can never find. There's no like
yeah, why
middle
did they
ground.
create normal songs like, you know?
I don't know.
The verse and the chorus
I don't
kind
know.
of similar.
Yeah.
I always think of "Forever" by Carrie Job.
I know, but she's like an
sang-
alien.
Yeah, she sang that high on
Yeah.
purpose. She
No,
knew
she
we
really
all
did.
struggle.
She
No,
nobody
just
can
kidding,
compare.
Carrie.
This isn't necessarily like super funny, but I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know if this happens to you when you lead worship, but obviously, like if Harut is leading worship, then he chooses the songs, and
Yeah.
sometimes he's like, "Oh, I can't think of another song," and we're like,
Yeah.
we suggest, right? But there are songs that are like his songs that are
Yeah.
his preferences, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And so it's like
and
a
there's
song
songs that
he,
are your songs.
and there are songs, yeah, Abby likes to point those out. Anyways, so but there's these songs that are like, you are singing them, but it's not your preferred one, but you're not leading, so you kind of have to go with the flow.
Yeah.
I don't know if it happens to you, but many times, because I guess I get moody immediately. I'm like, I don't want to sing the song. I don't want to sing the song.
Yeah.
I'm like thinking about the lyrics, and I'm like pointing out like why the song is not a worship song.
Yeah.
Why the song sounds like
I
I know.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because
Oh,
then
like
next
a
time
song
I need
goes
to
like,
next
it's
time
not
I
a
need to like
worship song.
debunk why that song like should not be
That's
sung.
like a whole other
Yeah.
conversation. That's like a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
Like,
like
like Reckless Love. That was like a big discussion for a while. If Reckless Love was even like should be a worship song, because
I think
like
there are
God's
worse
love
ones, though.
isn't reckless. Like he takes care. He wouldn't like.
Oh.
It was like
Well,
a
I
whole
mean,
big thing.
But
Yeah,
those are
it
like I guess like the poetic side, but I guess Songs of Solomon's in general like can be a very explicit. And so when you make worship songs like that are based on that. But it's true, like I was watching this other podcast with like some of the Hillsong people, and they were like like reading lyrics, or like somebody was saying the lyrics of some songs, and you had to guess whether it was like a worship song or a secular song.
Yeah.
You know, and many times, like, you know, the lines are really blurred, you know,
Yeah.
Like,
like
Sloppy Wet Kiss.
the sloppy wet kiss.
That was another big one. That was such a big deal for a while.
What's the
Yeah,
other, the
it's-
option? The
Unforeseen.
unforeseen kiss.
Unforeseen kiss.
That was just a mouthful.
It's also, I feel like equally, if not worse,
Yeah.
unforeseen. I don't want an unforeseen kiss.
Can you imagine?
I don't want anyone kissing me unforeseenly. Like,
Yeah.
I want to know if it's,
It's
coming,
true.
you know?
You
It's
don't
true.
understand it, what it means.
Oh, yeah. Unforeseen, like you didn't see it coming, you know, almost like,
Ah.
you know, this is the other
Like
person. You turn,
unexpected.
oh, okay, hello, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of like that's an unforeseen
What a
kiss.
worship song.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
interesting.
So
Yeah. That's a
these
good point.
songs,
These songs
but we love it.
that we are
Yeah.
blessed to sing, that we love singing. Yeah, I think that's a wrap on our second episode. Crazy. Here we are.
That's good.
Worship.
Thank you so much, Harut, for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. It was fun. Until next time.
He's going to be so chuffed. My wisdom.
My wisdom.
And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
I think that's it, no?
Yeah, next week.
Yeah.
Follow us for more. And if you've got any more suggestions, as always,
let us know.
Let us know what you want to listen.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.